if we start it there.
Okay.
Okay, Julia, you've been working with one particular technology, SMS, using mobile phones, where students can interact and text in their responses to kind of open, longer, qualitative questions. What's been your experience with using that particular technology, and how have you used it?
Okay, well, the first thing is just to re-emphasise what you just asked me, that the reason for using them, that I found interesting, is we've done a lot of work with using the audience response systems, the clickers, closed questions. Really interested in the idea of something where I could ask open questions and get a longer, more qualitative response back. I think it's been really interesting. I've done it in a limited way so far, but it's something I'm looking forward to actually increasing and experimenting a little bit more with. Two examples. I've used them in a first year philosophy of economics module that I teach, and I asked them, I start my module looking at philosophy of science, which feeds into philosophy of economics, and I asked them a question about what they understood by science. And we had really interesting, detailed answers back from them. And when I've used this material and shown it to other academics in terms of workshops about technology, people can't believe that these were student responses as they texted in. Now, students nowadays, have quite good quality phones very often where they're able to text quite a number of characters and a number of words. Secondly, some of them have phones that have the kind of pointers so they can write on it and so forth. But they were really excellent answers. And what I was then able to do is having got this range of answers from them, I was able to kind of categorise them and use them within my teaching to say some of your answers about science were looking at the empirical nature, some of your answers were looking at it in terms of how factual it was and so forth. And it was a stimulus for discussion, and it was a stimulus to lead me into other topics and areas that I was covering on the course. It's not something I would use all of the time, and interestingly, we had a student do some research a couple of years ago into the use of mobile phones, and at that point students said they were generally comfortable with using about 1 to 5 texts in a week on their own phone. Now, I think that's probably changed because nowadays they probably have contracts which allow them free texts and much more unlimited and probably don't mind. But about 50% of them are quite happy with using their own phones in that way. And I also think it's quite interesting because students have their mobile phones in lectures anyway. So in a sense, we're just giving them an opportunity to use them in a way that's kind of pedagogically interesting and useful in terms of their learning. A second example that I used very recently, teaching a third year climate change course, where we, in our very first lecture, where we'd introduced them to some of the kind of big picture issues around climate change, and we're obviously going to move through the course looking at the economics and looking at business strategy and innovation and a range of topics. But we wanted to stop at the beginning and see where the students were in terms of their thinking, and we got them working in a lecture room, and about 120 students, in small groups, discussing ideas for policies, ideas for strategies, what can we do about climate change. And having worked on that for about 5 or 10 minutes, I then put a question up on the board and got them to text back into me their answers. And I was actually able to show them in real time, and from that we actually had some quite interesting discussions from the answers that they came up with. So, I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is me asking that question and asking students to put their hand up. Well, this was a new course where they were coming together in a group where the 120 of them, most of them didn't necessarily know each other. And I think probably only a few of them would have felt comfortable at participating in that way in a large lecture theatre. But the way that we did it, we had responses from nearly everybody was able to participate and join in with that lecture. And of course we can take that information, keep it and use it, and we're sharing it with them up on our virtual learning environment. So I think that was very useful. The other thing which I'm hoping to experiment with this year, and I know there are academics in other universities in the UK who've done this, is rather than me asking the question, part way through a lecture, and particularly if I'm delivering a 2-hour lecture, I shall stop partway, in any event we give them a break, where I will ask them to text in questions to me, things that they perhaps would like me to pick up on or deal with in the second half of the lecture. So again, instead of having kind of queues of students forming, asking questions, it would be a very nice way for them, and also anonymous again, that they can ask me questions that then I can kind of pull together and address with them in the second half of the lecture. So I think it's a really interesting way of engaging in a different way. It's just got some different features than using the clickers, and I think the two are kind of quite complementary. And finally, I mean, the other great advantage with it is it's extraordinarily cheap. You know, all you have to do is buy a cheap mobile phone, download the software for free. As long as you have a laptop or something that's is Bluetooth enabled, away you go. And that's all it takes. Incredibly easy, incredibly straightforward. So you can show somebody how to do this within 5 minutes. And there you are. You've got the potential for a lecture full of students to be interacting with you in a way that engages them all.
That's really great. Thank you very much indeed. That's